colleague, Andrei Alexandrovich Yakovlev. He's a professor at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow. He's in the Faculty of Social Sciences and in the Department of State and Municipal Administration, as well as the Cátedra for the Theory and Practice of State Administration. His field, broadly speaking, is political economy. He has very wide-ranging research interests. He holds administrative positions, including he is director of the Institute for Industrial and Market Studies at the Higher School, and with Timothy Fry at Columbia, the co-director of the International Center for the Study of Institutions and Development. He has taught at the Higher School since 1993, and in 2016 he was named a Professor Ordinarius, which is the highest rank, academic rank a professor can have at a university. He's the author of a number of academic articles on topics such as business-government relations in Russia, law and public administration, and political and economic development in Russia's regions. He's also a member of numerous working groups drafting analytical reports for the Russian government. He's received many awards and honors, including last November, the Igor Gaidar Prize. The presentation today is part of a week-long series of events sponsored by the University Consortium. I think all of you are familiar with what that is. The title, as you can see, is In Response to External Shocks, How Advanced Russian Regions React to Changes in Federal Policies, the Experience of Tatarstan. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Andrei Yakovlev.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon for all colleagues. Actually, it is our joint paper with Lev Remington, Sergei Makarov, and Viktor Pogadayev, and it is a part of a broader project conducted by my institute at HSC about strategies and behavior of regional elites in Russia. Actually, it was many papers during the last 2 decades about increasing role of regions in economic development, not only in Russia, but in all world. For instance, this famous story about Mendoza province in Argentina. But I would stress some additional point concerning my personal motivation for this study and some other similar studies at our institute and our center. In my opinion, under current conditions of very deep divide in federal elite in Russia, and also a lack of any vision of future at federal level, I suppose that maybe not now, because now we have a bit special situation, but in 7 or 10 years, the quality of regional elites, their strategies, and also their ability to cooperate will be crucial for development of Russia. And therefore, in my opinion, a better understanding of strategies and behavior of elites in advanced regions is very important for better understanding of future of Russia. It is about our motivation here. And surely Tatarstan is a very special case because it is ethnic republic, and you can see here some basic numbers and facts. Tatarstan had some special status already in Soviet time. And it is a region with quite long history, special culture, and so on and so on. But nevertheless, in our opinion, understanding of behavior models of regional elites in such kind of regions can be important. Concerning Tatarstan, you can see from these numbers that it is industrial region, surely, with quite high level of urbanization, multi-ethnic region with approximately half of Tatars and half of Russians. Till last years, Tatarstan demonstrated a bit better level of social indicators comparing to Russian average in terms of income per capita and also unemployment and so on. At the same time, interesting point is that Tatarstan is one of very few Russian regions having its own oil company, Tatneft. It is some kind of consequence of 90s, but interesting point here is that neighboring region, Bashkortostan, had very similar formal conditions, but in 2009, Bashkortostan lost control on Bashneft. And now we can see this conflict between AFK system and Rosneft concerning the assets and so on. But Tatarstan till now can keep a control on this very important asset. Okay, concerning previous studies, actually it was quite many papers analyzed development of Tatarstan, mostly from political science view. It was mostly not about economic development. And the specificity of all the studies is that they were focused mostly on the experience of 90s and early 2000s. And it is very explainable, especially taking into account this information about creation with data numbers, about creation of political machine in Tatarstan. And actually I didn't put in this slide some previous numbers about 93 and 92, because it was quite important. In 94, in the spring 94, Shaimiev, president of Tatarstan, finally could reach the agreement with Yeltsin about formal agreement about distribution of authority between federation and republic. But before, Tatarstan tried to push on federal center with some kind of ignorance of federal elections. Because in 93, for instance, in the autumn of 93, it was quite important time period for Kremlin. Total turnout in federal elections in Tatarstan was about 15–20% only. Yeah. But after signing this agreement in the spring of 94, you can see totally our numbers with very high voting for ruling party. Also with some kind of bargaining, especially between first and second round of presidential elections in 96. But important point here is that after reaching this agreement with Kremlin, Shaimiev could demonstrate to regional elite that he is respected by Kremlin and he can bargain really. Because this agreement, it was not only about some political issues, it was also about huge benefits for Tatarstan, because Kremlin finally decided to leave to Tatarstan practically all taxes at this time point. No, actually, Kremlin in 93, 94 didn't have any serious money, and it can only give some exceptions from formal taxes and so on and so on. But at the same time, with consolidation of regional elite, especially after this agreement with Kremlin, Tatarstan also started to provide some expected results for Kremlin. And it was quite important in terms of creation of some kind of commitment on both sides for regional elite, because Shaimiev tried to consolidate elite, regional elite, during 91, 92, 93. And it was a really quite intensive political competition, especially between local nationalists, told about full sovereignty and so on and so on, and also some kind of Russian party. And the compromise was, on one hand, this treaty with Federal Center about huge autonomy provided for Tatarstan, but at the same time, it was another part of this story with Russian language, adopted as a second state language in Tatarstan, and it was also some kind of guarantees for Russian population. And Shaimeev surely could provide a really very balanced national policy, taking into account this multi-ethnicity structure of this region. But in any case, having all these resources in 90s, Shaimeev and his elite tried to use this money not only for themselves, but also for overall keeping of social stability. And here you can see, for instance, some comparison with Russian average in terms of unemployment and poverty. Here you can see new housing construction, inequality, and so on. Of course, mostly it was not about development. It was about some kind of survival under very difficult conditions of 90s, surely. Also, it was the idea to keep control on regional assets. And for instance, also as a part of these negotiations in 94 with Kremlin, Shaimeev could get approval for special forms of privatization in Tatarstan. First of all, it was delayed for 3 years. And additionally, Tatarstan is used could use not only federal vouchers issued by Chubais in 93-94, but also local vouchers. And it was the very important instrument to keep control on practically all assets and create some real serious barriers for any outsiders. It is not only about foreign investors, it is also about any investors from other Russian regions, including Moscow and St. Petersburg and so on. More generally, it is about the logic of interactions with federal government in 90s. It was first of all about political loyalty in exchange for a high level of autonomy and different kind of rights. But important was that regional elite really transferred significant part of this rent to masses. It was in different forms, like this huge construction of new apartment buildings in Kazan, with provision of new apartments for 50,000 families without any payments. But at the same time, it was necessary to finance such kind of huge construction work. And Shaimeev introduced additional tax for all enterprises in the Republic. It was 1% sales tax, including also enterprises owned by federal government. It was some attempts to protest from directors of these enterprises, and even and actually General Prosecutor Office tried to initiate some kind of investigation, criminal case, and so on. And Shaimeev told publicly, I think it was 95 or 96, that he will be glad to go to the court to such kind of criminal investigation for the reasons that he tried to give new apartments for people. And after that, Kremlin stopped any investigations in this field. Oh, so it was really, in my opinion, very smart policy in terms of bargaining with different parties. But it was a really important part of this policy, the idea to provide broader social support for ruling regional elite. And it was very important in terms of broader arguments for bargaining with federal center, especially during elections. Important part of this model, it was also a provision of some results, not only in terms of high voting for ruling party, but also in terms of implementation of different kind of federal projects. And from this point of view, this millennium of Kazan was quite symptomatic, because it was implemented already under Putin in 2004-2005. But a relevant decree was signed by Yeltsin, I suppose, in the summer of '99 or in '98. So it was some kind of formal commitment of Federal Center to provide some resources for this important historical event. But important point was here that these significant resources provided by Federal Center already in early 2000s were not stalled. No, at least significant part of these resources really was used to construct roads, other infrastructure, and so on in the city. And it was quite important for Federal Center because, yes, all elites at all levels in Russia tried to participate in different kind of land seeking. But comparing to other regions, Tatarstan could provide also some results. It was not only about land seeking, it was also about some kind of development. But important point is that some other regions also had similar characteristics. And therefore, we try to answer the question what was different in Tatarstan. Well, because, for instance, in the 90s, we had also our very powerful governors like Rossil in Yekaterinburg, Titov in Samara, and so on. Yeah? So Shaimiev, from this point of view, was not unique. Okay, what was different? No, actually, we used for this paper not only available statistical data, but also we could get access to some local people of different age, playing important role in regional elite in 90s, in 2000s, and to get some kind of understanding of regional development from the interviews with these people. And also we try to analyze some kind of formal publications of early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s. And in this case, exactly from these publications, it was understandable that Shaimiev already in mid and late 90s tried to develop some kind of long-term strategy for the region. Of course, from a formal point of view, such kind of strategy was elaborated and adopted only under Minikhanov already. It was actually 3 or 4 years ago. But overall idea of such kind of long-term planning horizon and so on was really proposed originally by Shaimiev. Second point, it is really very early recognition of risks of ethnic nationalism. With this quite balanced policy realized by Shaimiev in early mid-90s, and it was really stressed by many scholars already 15 years ago. And Shaimiev tried to create some kind of regional identity with idea to provide opportunities for cooperation for different social and national groups. Another important point, it was about quite active use of old institutional structure inherited from Soviet time. And comparing to our regions, and it was quite important difference from our regions, Shaimiev really could provide very strong pressure on organized crime, because in late 80s, early 90s, these criminal clans from Kazan were really very active. It was not only from Kazan, it was also from Nabережный, and we operated not only in Tatarstan, but we operated also in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, in Samara, and in many other regions. And actually, it's interesting that no, it was not Shaimiev personally, it was Safarov, his Minister of Interior during, I think, 15 years. They used, in some sense, illegal instruments to push with criminals. But finally, they could control situation in the Republic. Another point is about the creation of some special institutions for cooptation of different elite groups in decision-making process in the region. Of course, it is some kind of authoritarian regime, surely, created already in the mid-90s, but with quite broader participation of different local groups in the process of, no, maybe not decision-making, but elaboration of decisions. Important part of the system was regional parliament, state council, with a bit funny system of elections, because mostly it was the place for heads of district administrations. It was mostly some kind of administrative body. But after appointment to the position of a head of district administration, especially in countryside, a relevant person should participate in elections, both at district level and republic level. And he should demonstrate his own ability to mobilize voters. And if he was not successful, with very high probability, he was removed in some future. So it was really a bit funny, but quite balanced system. Also, additionally to this regional parliament, state council, it was some other bodies like TAT, Neftekhim Invest Holding, as a high-level advisory council with actually no real decision-making. Decision-making was the authority of Shaimeev, really. But he really tried to provide quite broad consultations with different stakeholders in the regions. And it was important also for a better understanding of policy of Shaimeev by different stakeholders. No, as a result, really, Shaimeev could provide commitments both to regional and local elites and to federal government. And this repeated game with better expectations no, it was repeated game with better expectations and more trust at the end. Yeah. Providing again some conditions for broader autonomy and access to resources for the region. Important part of the story is also opportunities for promotion of local officials to different kind of positions in federal government. And it was important in terms of social lifts, because already starting from mid-90s, the most part of regional economy was controlled by actually 30 to 50 families. But these opportunities of promotion to federal level could soften some internal tensions in elite. Because yes, these people could not get access to top positions, especially in terms of real control of assets in the republic. But they could go to federal center, and it was beneficially both for republic and for federal center too, because typically these people were quite qualified and competent, and they really were not bad bureaucrats for federal government. But at the same time, they could provide some kind of help, formal or informal, for Tatarstan, having these positions in federal government. At the same time, Tatarstan, Shaimeev used these channels of promotion to federal level also in some cases for soft exclusion of some non-cooperative representative of regional elite. Especially it was Gazizulin in 96 and Ishakov in 2005. Important point also here is this peaceful transition of power from Shaimiev to Minnikhanov in 2010, and it was also quite significant difference to a majority of Russian regions. Next point actually is about impact of 2008-2009 crisis. Surely already starting from 2000s, model of governance in Tatarstan started to change because changed very significantly conditions at federal level, and bargaining power of republic, national republics. It is not only about Tatarstan. After presidential elections in 2000, really started to decline. And Tatarstan tried to adopt some kind of new version of model with participation in practically all federal initiatives and with idea to substitute some lost benefits after revision of this agreement between federal center and Tatarstan about distribution of authorities and so on. We try to substitute this benefits by some new resources provided by federal center via different federal programs and so on. In the logic of this state capitalism developed by Putin and his colleagues. But nevertheless, till 2008, mostly, it was the model based on different kind of bargaining with federal center and based on different kind of resources provided by federal center. An important point is here that actually with all projects, quite successful projects implemented in Tatarstan, like Kazan Millennium or Special Economic Zone, Labogo, and so on, it was no real differences in terms of economic growth between Tatarstan and Russian average till 2010. So, in any case, it was quite interesting model of governance and model of bargaining, but without real catching up development. What was important from this point of view with this crisis of 2008-2009, on one hand, federal government provided real huge emergency support for advanced regions, including Tatarstan. It was not only for Tatarstan, but also for Tatarstan. It was important. But at the same time, it was some understanding already in 2010 that this overall attitude of Kremlin about huge financial resources accumulated in 2000s and this feeling of independency of Putin elite in terms of opportunity to push on Europe using this natural resource leverage and so on and so on. No, actually, it was not full illusion, but especially after this decline of oil prices, not only people in Kremlin, but also people in Tatarstan started to understand that such kind of model has quite strong limitations. And it's necessary to start to think about some new type of model. Of course, it was also some personal changes because Shaimiev moved from the position of president. Minnikhanov got this position. But Minnikhanov was not a new person. He served during 12 years before as Prime Minister of the Republic. But nevertheless, Minnikhanov was much younger and in some sense much more ambitious. And if Shaimiev tried to keep balance and save some kind of old potential of republic in different terms. Minnikhanov really tried to think about development. And it was quite symptomatic that already starting from 2010, he visited many times East Asian countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Malaysia, and so on, with the idea to learn some experience from these countries. Next point was about elaboration of strategy 2030. Some formal request about this strategy was made by Minnikhanov in 2012. And he asked really quite large consortium of consultants led by people, led by Leontief Center in St. Petersburg, and actually Goodrich was formal leader of this team. They spent about 2.5 years for elaboration of this document, and of course it was also, at least partially, the paper, which huge paper actually, which could be used for a new route of negotiations with Kremlin, with idea to explain the need of republic for additional resources and so on. But no, and from this point of view, it was part of rent-seeking strategy actually. But in real terms, it was not only about rent-seeking, because exactly at this time, Tatarstan could see the story of Bashkortostan, because in Bashkortostan, exactly in 2009, 2010, also was a change of president, and it was not peaceful. Rahimov was really removed, and a new leader of republic was appointed by Kremlin, and it was a real outsider. At the same time, in 2009, Bashkortostan lost control on Bashneft due to some manipulation and so on at the stage of privatization of this company. And according to our interviews, this request to elaborate strategy 2030 in 2012 was followed by some kind of question formulated by Minnikhanov and his people, how Tatarstan can survive and develop without oil. And formal reason and formal references were made to this very deep decline of oil prices in 2008. But informal explanations, it was, and it was also said to experts, was that it can be another part of story if Tatarstan will lose control on Tatneft. And the idea was to create another model of development with much more diversified economy and with less dependence on decisions made by Kremlin. Because, for instance, in the case of oil company, it is very simple to take control by issuing some kind of decree or starting some kind of criminal investigation and so on. But if we are talking, for instance, about IT industry, of course it's possible formally to take formal control on some assets. But key assets in this case is not about formal entity. It is about some knowledge, some people, and so on. And it is much more flexible and not so easy to capture such kind of things for outsiders. In any case, these experts elaborated this strategy, and it was the process of deep consultations with key local stakeholders. And Minnikhanov participated also in this process. It was some meetings every 3 months and so on, typically with participation of Goodrich. And for me, it was really very impressive that finally this decision about adoption of the strategy of regional law was made, I suppose, in the spring 2015, 1 year later after Crimea session and so on. But it was the strategy about a transformation of Tatarstan to globally competitive region with openness to foreign investors, deep integration in global markets, and so on. In my opinion, it was done even under all very different rhetorics at federal level already at this time point, because discussion of all these strategies and all these ideas was made already in 2013 before Crimea session. And yes, it is surely authoritarian system, but with some kind of commitment of leader to his own people. Because if, according to local culture, national culture, if a regional leader told something publicly, he should implement these ideas. It is part of some kind of social contract in the region. In any case, what about some kind of development after 2010? Here you can see some differences in dynamics, for instance, in terms of really increase in expenses for technological research and development, comparing to Russian average. That is about economic growth. Of course, in general, economic growth in Russia after 2008-2009 was much lower comparing to the time period of early and mid-2000s. But only in this time period, Tatarstan started to grow quickly comparing to Russian averages. That is some kind of example of regional success story, the story of Nizhny Kamsk-Neftekhim, big plant created in Soviet time, surely, but they could not only keep control on this plant in 90s, but they could really support this enterprise with some kind of subsidies and so on, regional subsidies. And now it is one of serious player in global market in relevant niches, and it is really quite competitive in terms of also huge amount of export and so on. It is another story about special economic zone Alabukha. Actually, the decision about creation of this zone was made already in 2005. But it was not so quick process, and the majority of residents came to this special economic zone already under Minnikhanov in 2010 and later. And it is also from, at least comparing to other Russian regions, success story, because now this only one special economic zone accumulated about 64% of all revenues of special economic zone, 37% of tax payments, and half of all residents' investments. Some final slides, actually. Is it success story? It is unclear. Because on one hand, yes, there are some positive facts and positive trends. But at the same time, there is a lot of contradictions and risks. For example, according to this strategy 2030, Tatarstan need for some kind of medium scenario about $44 billion of investment until 2030. But all capitalization of local enterprises, including Nizhny Kamsk-Neftekhim and so on, now is about $20 billion. And it means that if regional elite really expect and would like to invite these investors, they should share control. And it's a big question. Because now, as I told already, the most important assets are controlled by 30 to 50 families in the Republic. There is really a need for new human capital but limited capacity of local universities. And actually, regional elite tried to attract additional financial resources, and they could do it in bargaining with federal center. Now we have one federal university, two national research universities. All these things are equal to additional resources. But for instance, I had an interview with rector of Kazan Federal University. And it was a bit strange because he is doctor of science and so on and so on, it's sure, yeah. But he is a former head of district administration of Alabuga. And surely he was appointed to the position of rector with idea to keep control on this important assets and this important cash flow. And the style of administration is totally non-academic. I don't know, is it understandable for Minekhanov now or not, but nevertheless. Another point is about really very limited space for small and medium-sized enterprises. But interesting point is that, for instance, we had some strategic session in Kazan in autumn 2016 in the framework of one project realized by Center for Strategic Research. No, it was already led by Goodrich and so on. And it was quite open discussion on such kind of issues. And for instance, some older people, I don't remember now the name, but it's not so important. According to my discussions with some local colleagues after that, they stressed that he was really some local politicians with some kind of reputation and some kind of weight. He stressed exactly this point, that it's impossible to develop a sustainable market economy without space for small and medium-sized enterprises. Of course, there are also some internal political risks because Minekhanov started some kind of centralization in regional government. Well, in my opinion, it is mostly due to some personal aspects of him. It is his own style. If Shaimiev would like, before making decision, to get some kind of consultation with different people, Minekhanov is a very strong leader, and it was even some kind of comments in our interviews that main development institution in Tatarstan is Minekhanov. But at the same time, surely it's risky, because removing such kind of person, or simply aging of such kind of person, can be quite dangerous for overall situation. Of course, there are external political risks in terms of high dependence on the decision of Kremlin. And also with some additional restrictions created for all these strategies to be globally competitive regions, simply due to geopolitical tensions with US and Europe, with restrictions in access to investment technology and so on. Nevertheless, maybe some last slides already. In my opinion, important part of this governance model created in Tatarstan by Shaimiev and actually supported more or less by Minekhanov is about elite consensus. And it is maybe the most important difference comparing to our Russian regions. And for me and my colleagues, it is maybe one of key reasons for some kind of optimism concerning this region. Surely it was some consensus and cooperation in regional elite facing serious challenges, like in early and mid-90s, also in early 2000s with new federal government, also this situation of 2008-2009 crisis. But it seems that under such kind of strong pressure and serious challenges, main group in regional elite really can cooperate each other. And it's really important for searching for some potential solutions for the future. and maybe some broader implications. We understand that, of course, it is very specific story, specific case, because it is national republic with a high level of autonomy inherited from Soviet time and so on, with very special culture. But nevertheless, in our opinion, consolidation of elite and elite consensus can be considered as very important precondition for a transition to new developmental state. And actually, one of our questions at the beginning of all this study was about the possibility to have such kind of move to developmental state in the country like Russia, a move from regional level. And we try to consider also some papers and works about developmental state in other countries and regions, but it was mostly about national level. And this situation, with some attempts to create such kind of developmental state at regional level, really can be some new story, and it's really potentially interesting. Important point is that, yes, this paper was about Tatarstan, but we worked during last years also with many other regions in Russia. And for instance, it is very interesting story of Voronezh. Started actually only in 2009 under Gordiev, but in some sense with similar characteristics, because Gordiev, as outsider, because he was appointed by Kremlin, but he was not connected in any forms with Voronezh before. He could create in Voronezh region during 8 years, in some sense, similar consensus in regional elites, using also quite interesting instruments, maybe not always similar to Sheremeyev, but more generally, I think that this situation of much harder budget constraints for federal government and for Kremlin after 2008-2009, and especially after 2014-2015, created some new opportunities at regional level, especially in the case of regions where we can see some advanced and forward-looking governors, also some kind of regional elite of better quality, and surely in the case of regions with some resources in broader terms. It can be not only about oil and or metallurgy and so on. For instance, the case of Kaluga. In the case of Kaluga, many resources was cheap qualified labor force inherited for Soviet time, and good road to Moscow. But it was also very smart governor, forward-looking, and also it was quite competent technocratic elite working with him. And in combination of such kind of things, in my opinion, it is possible to see some the story about development in Russia, even under all current political conditions and so on. And maybe a very last point, I suppose that unfortunately, exactly due to this lack of any strategic vision and so on, Russia will face a very serious crisis in 7 or 10 or maybe 12 years. It is not now, but in not very long future. And survival during this crisis will be strongly depend on the existence of such kind of relevant, smart in some sense, regional elites, which could be also able to cooperate each other. So maybe I will stop here.
Good. Thank you very much. It's fascinating to think what the opportunities are for governors, even in the fairly centralized system that prevails in Russia, to use existing resources and legacies to create means of promoting developmental strategies. But I'm sure many people have questions that they would like to raise. Who would like to ask the first question?